Are you getting frustrated about why you play insane some days but get absolutely annihilated in almost every match you play on other days? Well, if that's the case, you're at the right place, because in this video, I'll be explaining exactly why that happens. Before getting into why you experience quote-unquote bad days, it's really important for me to establish what that actually means. When I say bad days, I'm not talking about those days where you lose a match or two, because as you win more matches, you'll obviously start facing better players, which means you will eventually lose a match or two. In short, you will win some, you will lose some, but sometimes you're of course also in a loser's queue and a winner's queue. What I am referring to though are those days when your aim just feels way worse than it was 1 day or 2 days prior, and you don't seem to land nearly as many headshots as you used to, or when you keep getting killed for the most basic mistakes that you wouldn't ever have made on one of your good days. If all of this sounds similar to what you're experiencing, then it means that you aren't performing up to the mark of your own skill level, and the matches you lose because of these issues aren't part of your regular losses. You can brush off with the excuse that the enemy team was just good. Without further ado, let's jump right into why you have these bad days every now and then, and also how to fix it. The first reason a lot of people often experience off days is skipping warm-ups. A good warm-up routine is one of the most effective and efficient ways to improve your consistency in competitive gaming. Yet it gets ignored by a massive portion of the gaming community, including many players in the top ranks. But why is that? The reason you should be concerned with warming up is because it helps activate your muscle memory where much of your skills lie. Long story short, a muscle memory refers to the signals sent into the subconscious part of your brain. Muscle memory is what allows you to perform tasks without actively having to think about them. For instance, when you counter strafe or peek an angle, you don't actually think about the movement. It kind of just happens. However, there is no guarantee that your muscle memory will kick in and perform at the highest level every time you play Valorant. Fortunately, you can, to a relatively big extent, fix that with a simple warm-up routine. The next time you hop on Valorant, spend 30 to 45 minutes playing deathmatch and try and get in a few minutes of aim training. If you do this regularly before every Valorant session, you'll notice your aim, movement, peaks, and all the fundamentals just getting so much more consistent. The second reason many players have those off days in Valorant is that they keep changing their setup and settings. The thing about muscle memory is that it takes time for it to develop. You'll need to clock in hundreds of hours of repetition before a particular skill gets engraved in your subconsciousness. However, when you constantly change your in-game settings or the positioning of your setup, your brain gets confused. I often see players trying out a new aspect ratio, keyboard, or sitting position every day because they saw on the internet that it would help them get better at the game. The problem with this approach is that changing those variables so quickly won't give your brain enough time to adapt and develop the required muscle memory. Don't get me wrong here, I'm not saying that you shouldn't experiment with new settings to see what best suits your preferences. The problem lays with the speed of which someone makes those changes. If you want to try out a new keyboard or some other settings, use it for at least 10 days before hopping on to the next keyboard and the next keybinds. Taking things slow will help you make accurate assessments about whether the changes are working. Another common issue that results in bad days is a suboptimal mental state. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, there are two main ways a player can have a suboptimal mental state. Firstly, you might be in a bad mood because of something that happened earlier that day. Maybe you missed the bus and had to walk all the way home, or maybe your favorite shirt got ruined. Maybe even both, because those days sadly do happen. Regardless of what happened, the frustration stays with you and gets projected on the game you're playing. Because you're already in a bad mood, you get mad at the little mistakes you make that otherwise wouldn't bother you. As you get in a worse mood, you start making more and more mistakes, and the frustration starts to snowball. Secondly, a player might have something going on in the back of their head that keeps them from thinking clearly and focusing on the match. For example, maybe your mom told you to mow the lawn before she comes home, but you decide to play Valorant instead. Now for the entire Valorant session, you'll be thinking about the task you're delaying instead of looking at your team's economy or focusing on enemy positioning like you do when your head is clear. If you get the grass or finish whatever task you're avoiding, you'll be much more relaxed while playing the game. You might have less time to play if you take care of other tasks, but it will be much less stressful and way more enjoyable since you won't be thinking about that one thing that you should have done instead, whether that be mowing the lawn, writing on a school project, or cleaning the house. Similar to having a suboptimal mental state, being physically drained can have an extremely negative effect on how you perform. The most common feeling of physical fatigue for us playing Valorant is probably lack of sleep, since it's not uncommon for us to stay up very late and have an impressively inconsistent sleep schedule. The problem with this arises when you have to go to work or school the day after. In those situations, when you've had a period of time with a terrible sleep schedule, it will sadly affect your ability to perform even the simplest tasks, let alone something as mentally demanding as competitive Valorant. Another common source of physical exhaustion for Valo players is not eating enough or not eating the right food. For the longest time, I haven't actively thought of the importance of taking care of my nutritional needs. Sometimes when I'm playing a session and I get really into it, I skip meals and then wonder why I'm not performing well after the 12th hour of not eating. Then as soon as I get some food down me, I almost instantly see a performance increase increase. If you think you have a bad day, look back at what you ate and how much sleep you got, and you'll probably notice either not getting enough sleep or feeling hungry because you haven't eaten anything. Trust me on this, when I take care of my sleep and nutrition, I very rarely get those really bad days. I'm not telling you to go overboard and become a health freak. You don't need to start eating like a professional bodybuilder or drinking spinach. Just eat enough food that you're fully energized. Make sure that most of your meals aren't junk food and that you're getting around 7 hours of sleep every night. But if you can somehow also get a consistent sleep schedule, that will do wonders for your competitive career. Inconsistency in your gaming performance can also arise from an inconsistent gaming routine. The main goal of having a consistent gaming routine is to not play brainlessly and essentially wasting time. Unless of course you're only playing for fun, which I also 100% respect. But I doubt that people watching this channel aren't eager to improve and get to the top. For example, let's say you have a class in 1 hour and decide to play some ranked. However, you won't have time to warm up since you only have 1 hour. Plus, you won't be able to play with a clear mindset since you'll be thinking about the class you have to go to. The thing is, there is no need to play whenever you have a sliver of free time. You can find something else to do in that time that is either more productive or entertaining. I understand that this is all the free time that many people get. However, you must develop a gaming routine and stick to it if you want to reach those high ranks and potentially make it in the Valorant scene. Now, a gaming routine isn't writing down 1 hour of deathmatch, 1 hour of ranked, and then 1 hour of VOD review like a lot of people think it is. A gaming routine is simply going into the sessions you're playing with a set plan, not just playing brainlessly and not getting anything out of it. When you hop offline for the day, think about what weaknesses you have and how you can isolate each and every one of them and potentially start working on one tomorrow. Tackling weaknesses this way will help you limit those awful days. The sixth reason a lot of people experience bad days is that they keep ignoring those days when they do happen, which is probably the worst thing anyone can do for gameplay consistency. Hear me out, it's completely normal to lose a Valorant match since that happens even to the best of players. However, as we already discussed, there's a difference between losing because the enemy team was better than you and losing because you weren't playing as well as you usually do. But the reality is, you will never be able to spot that difference if you keep ignoring your losses. When you lose a match, you should take it as an opportunity to improve yourself. Look at the replay footage of the match and observe the mistakes you made. See if you're making careless mistakes you know you don't regularly make or aren't playing on par with your skill level. The thing about your off days is that those days are the days that show your true weaknesses. In other words, a perfect opportunity to pick up on exactly what you need to work on. The final reason why you might have days where you play really bad is burnout. This is probably the most crucial part of this entire video, since if you continue trying to push yourself despite being burned out, you'll end up being worse at the game. There are several gameplay characteristics that you can look for to figure out whether you're burnt out. For example, you can ask yourself, do you want to play Valorant right now? Or will you go through the motions only to get the hours in? If you aren't in the mood to play some Valorant, that's your brain telling you to take a break. There's actually a lot of scientific evidence highlighting the benefits of taking breaks. Professional athletes have reported making significant improvements right after taking a break from all the training. However, I'm not suggesting that you take month-long vacations and keep on training for weeks on end right after. Instead, you can sprinkle a few 2 or 3 day breaks after a couple of weeks of consistent training, or even take a week-long break when you feel the need for it. It's all about getting to know your limits so you know how much you can handle and when to take a step back and relax for a while. I personally didn't believe in burnout for the longest time, but sadly, I got to experience that it is extremely real. And if I showed myself this very video 2 years ago, I would laugh and call myself a non-grinder. The sad reality though is that I simply got fully burnt out after investing an unhealthy amount of hours into the game every day for months on end. And already, that is it for this one. I hope 1 or 2 of the things I said in this video can be of some help. Thank you all so much for sticking around until the very end. That's really appreciated. Other than that, I'll see you very soon.